start speaking, I'd like to ask the blessings of the senior devotees present, Shesha Brewadi, Karta Prabhu, and others, that I can say something that will be enlivening to all the assembled devotees and will be pleasing to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda and our disciplic succession. I decided to, there's so many things to say. I mean, Lord Chaitanya is such a huge topic, such a sublime topic, such an amazing, and you can speak unlimitedly about Lord Chaitanya. So I thought what I would do is start with these. In the beginning of the Adi Lila, there are four, there's a series of verses which are kind of like sutras. They're sort of an overview of the whole episode of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. And they give some very deep insights about the most important aspects of Lord Chaitanya's identity and his mission. So, all right, before we start, we'll say, we'll do Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
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 Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
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 So if you want to follow along with these verses, it's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 1, and I'll be reading text 3 to 6. So we'll go through them one at a time and elaborate a little on each one, and that will form the substance of the class. So, text 3. I'll read this out. The Sanskrit's a little difficult. It's a 17-syllable mantra, so I'll just recite it myself, since most of you don't have the text in front of you. Yad advaitam brahmo panishadi tat apyasya tanubha ya atmantayami purusha iti sosyam shavibaha shad aishvarya purno ya iha bhagavan sa swayam ayam na chaitanyat krishnaj jagati paratatvam param iha. The translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. What the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord, known as the Supersoul, is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with 6 opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. So in this verse, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's establishing from the very beginning who Lord Chaitanya is. That he's not, sometimes we refer to him as an incarnation of Krishna or an avatar, but he's not an incarnation of Krishna. He is Krishna. He's Krishna himself. So basically anything that we can say about Krishna in terms of tattva also applies exactly to Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya is also the impersonal Brahman. He's all-pervading. He's pervasive in everything. He's in every atom. The light of the sun that illuminates the universe is just a tiny little beam from the effulgence of his body. The Super Soul, who is in the hearts of everyone, is just a plenary portion of Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya is Bhagavan as well, full of all the 6 opulences: wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, beauty, wisdom and renunciation. So, so Lord Chaitanya is the source of all the spiritual, material worlds. Everything emanates from Lord Chaitanya. All different energies that are at play in the material and spiritual worlds are coming from Lord Chaitanya. So in this way, yes, Lord Chaitanya is in tattva exactly the same as Krishna. He is Krishna. But then there are some differences. There are two important differences. And one is his form. So Lord Chaitanya takes the form of a devotee. He doesn't pose himself, but he doesn't present himself as Krishna. And in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj calls him the Channa avatar. So the word Channa means covered, that he's covered over. He comes in disguise. So it's like Krishna comes personally, but disguised as his devotee. And another difference is his mood, that he comes in the mood of Srimati Radharani. So we'll elaborate more upon these in the next verses. So in text 4, I'll read text 4 now. Anarpita charim charat karunaya vatirna kalo samarpaitum unato jvalarasam swabhakti shriyam hari purata sundara duti kadamba sandipitaha saddaridaya kandare spuratu vashachi. So in the first part of this verse, Krishna's Kaviraj gives us a blessing. He says, "May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendentally situated in the innermost chambers of your heart." So this is the word here is Hridaya Kandare. So the word Kandare is a Sanskrit word which literally means cave. So Hridaya Kandare is the cave, the dark cave of our hearts. So yeah, as conditioned souls, our hearts are covered by so many, layers of conditioning and, lust and greed and envy and illusion and false pride and all these things. So the core of our hearts is like a dark cave being covered with all these layers of material conditioning. So he's saying that may that dark cave of your heart be illuminated by the radiance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of Lord Chaitanya. And he gives a really interesting metaphor here about the light. So the word sandipita means lighted up. And then he says kadamba sandipita. So some of you who have been to India, maybe even here, do they have kadamba flowers here in Florida? No, they could grow here probably. Anyways, if you've ever seen a kadamba flower, it's like a ball, and it's got all these little flowers, like thousands of little flowers poking out of this ball-shaped thing. And so, if you just imagine that each one of those 1,000 of little tiny flowers is like a light bulb, a really bright light bulb. So it's this ball with like light just emanating from, all around it, sphere of light. So it's saying that Lord Chaitanya has this radiance of molten gold. Hari Purata Sundara Duty. So Purata means gold. And then this beautiful Sundara Duty, this illumination, which is so beautiful. It's like molten gold. And it's like this big ball. So may this illumination of Lord Chaitanya be situated in your life, like a glowing kadamba flower full of, transcendental illumination. And let it just light up your life with, pure love of Krishna as Lord Chaitanya came to give. And so that's the second part of the verse. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. So this was a very important mission of Lord Chaitanya, that he comes as a devotee by his causeless mercy, as it says here, karunaya avatirna. He descended by his just karuna. Karuna means causeless mercy. There's like different words for mercy. There's kripaya, means mercy, but kripa is that mercy that you go begging for. you approach the person, you're like, please give me your mercy. So that, and then when the person is merciful on your, humble request, that's kripa. And then doya is the mercy which is specific. It's specific to a certain person. Doya korma, please be merciful to me, or it's a specific thing. But karuna is like this all-encompassing. That's why he translates it causeless, because karuna has this connotation of causeless. Like, they didn't ask for it. They don't even want it. It's not for anyone in particular. It's just let everybody have the mercy. So that mood of karuna is Lord Chaitanya's mood, that I'm just going there to bestow my most sublime benediction. And the most sublime benediction because it's something that no other incarnation gave before. Because other incarnations may teach, that you should worship God, you should serve God, and all these things. But Lord Chaitanya gave the mood of conjugal love. He gave like the whole gamut of rasas, not just the other incarnations generally give dasya ras, but only Krishna himself can give the three higher rasas of Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. And specifically Madhurya is the most confidential and exalted relationship with Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya gave that one, Ujjvala Rasa, the supremely brilliant, glorious rasa of conjugal love, as Prabhupada translates it here. So then, and then Krishna's Kaviraj a little bit later in the 3rd chapter, because each one of these verses he unpacks. The first verse where it's establishing that he's non-different from Krishna, there's a whole chapter. This is the first chapter that I'm reading from. And then chapter 2 is called Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's just unpacking text 3. And then this verse that I just read here about, that he bestowed out of his causeless mercy to give the mellow of conjugal love, that's unpacked in chapter 3, which is called The External Reasons for Lord Chaitanya's Appearance. So in this chapter 3, Krishna's Kaviraj, he has this amazing insight into Lord Chaitanya, Krishna's thought process before he comes as Lord Chaitanya. So Krishna's there in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world, and it was like almost 5,000 years ago that he had come to perform his Vrindavan Leela here on this planet. And so at that time, he's sort of there and he's observing the material world, and he's thinking, it's been so long since I've come and performed my pastimes there. And the knowledge that I taught in the Bhagavad Gita is practically lost. And the whole Vrindavan where I performed my pastimes it's nobody even knows about it anymore. It's practically, it's just a vacant forest. And the deities that were established later, by Krishna's grandson, they were underground. They were just, the temples were it's just the wind, there's so much, just nature took over. It's like if there's a place that nobody cares about, it gets overgrown, everything gets buried and all that by dust storms and everything. So everything was just underground. And even the scriptures, like when Lord Chaitanya came, he had to search all over India for a copy of the Brahma Samhita. It was just like everything had disappeared. And the teachings, like Krishna had taught in the Bhagavad Gita that he should be the supreme object of worship. But nobody was worshiping Krishna. And he had specifically said in the Bhagavad Gita that only less intelligent people worship the demigods, and that people with no intelligence, abudaya, then they think that the impersonal Brahman is supreme. And then people in the mode of passion worship yakshas and rakshasas. But that's what people were doing. Instead of worshiping Krishna, they were doing all the things that Krishna specifically said that, smart people don't do. These are condemned, basically. And so he was saying, it's just all wrong. Everything that I tried to establish when I came is gone. And all the things that I spoke against are happening. They're all just everywhere. So he said, something needs to be done. So this is, Krishna's Kaviraj is quoting Krishna's thinking. He says, after disappearing, however, Krishna thinks thus. So I'm starting from chapter 3, text 14. For a long time I have not bestowed unalloyed loving service to me upon the inhabitants of the world. Without such loving attachment, the existence of the material world is useless. So he's saying this whole, because the material world is for a purpose. This whole creation exists for a purpose, and that purpose is basically for us to be rectified, to reestablish our loving relationship with Krishna, and to go back to the spiritual world. But if there's no knowledge of Krishna, if no one's practicing Krishna consciousness, if there's no holy places and no scriptures, then how are people going to fulfill the purpose of life? How is the purpose of creation going to be realized? It's not. Therefore, the whole thing is useless, he's saying. So Krishna's being very kind. He's like, I can't just leave people in this useless situation wasting their lives. He continues here, text 15. Everywhere in the world, people worship me according to scriptural injunctions. But simply by following such regulated principles, one cannot attain the loving sentiments of devotees in Brajabhumi. So he's saying that even people who are like Brahmins, who are like a little religious and who have some knowledge of that there is a supreme Lord out there somewhere, but even those people, when they worship me, it's all just very ritualistic. You know, it's just according to this rule and that regulation. There's no love. There's no devotion. It's just like a thing. You know, it's a mechanical. So then he says, knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. So he says that this kind of ritualistic worship for people who are just like fearing God and, you know, God is great sort of thing, it doesn't attract me, because Krishna's all about sweetness. You know, Krishna's all about love. And so if the worship is lacking love, there's no devotion, there's no sweetness to it, then he's like, oh, come on guys, you can do better than this. So he says, then he says, text 17, by performing such regulated devotional service in awe and veneration, one may go to Vaikuntha and attain the 4 kinds of liberation. So he says that, and he's kind of implying here, but so by this process they might be able to get to Vaikuntha at best, but how are they ever going to get to Goloka? How are they going to get to the highest planet? How are they ever going to come back to me? They're just going to be able to go to Vishnu and have 4-armed Vishnu forms and just wave chamaras for the rest of eternity. You know, it's like, how are they ever going to get back to me and engage in my loving pastimes with my friends and my family and the cows and the monkeys of Vrindavan and, you know, all these sweet, wonderful pastimes. So we see here also Krishna's in this really merciful mood that he wants to give the highest thing. He doesn't want to just force us. He doesn't want to deprive us, you know, of the highest thing. He wants to bless us with this amazing opportunity to go to Goloka Vrindavan. And so then he decides, text 19, I shall personally inaugurate the religion of the age, Nam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name. I shall make the whole world dance in ecstasy, realizing the 4 mellows of loving devotional service. So this 4 mellows of Dasyam, Sakyam, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. So the whole, all of them. I'm going to present all, I'm going to make sure they know about all of them. He says, text 20, I shall accept the role of a devotee, and I shall teach devotional service by practicing it myself. So then you could ask, well, why doesn't he just send someone to teach devotional service? Why does he have to come himself? He could send an incarnation. He could send, you know, a pure devotee from up there to teach everyone. So why does he have to come personally? So he also he thinks about that, and he says in text 26, skipped a few verses here, that my plenary portions can establish the principles of religion for each age. No one but me, however, can bestow the kind of loving service performed by the residents of Vraj. And then he continues. There may be many all-auspicious incarnations of the personality of Godhead, but who other than Lord Sri Krishna can bestow love of God upon the surrendered souls? So this here he's not saying I, he's saying Lord Sri Krishna, because this is actually, Krishna's Kaviraj is quoting Bilvan Mangala Thakur, who's expressing Krishna's own thoughts. So now Krishna continues, therefore, in the company of my devotees, I shall appear on earth and perform various colorful pastimes. Thinking thus, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself, descended at Nadia early in the age of Kali. So this is the external reason for Lord Chaitanya's appearance, that he really wants to give us the highest give us access to the highest relationships with Krishna, and to give us also the process for realizing those highest relationships with Krishna, which is the chanting of the holy name, Nam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna, which is what we do all the time in our kirtans and japa. So Krishna doesn't come alone. Whenever he comes with all of his associates, and that's what he's saying. In the company of my devotees, I shall appear on earth and perform my pastimes. And whenever Krishna comes, he sends whoever's meant to be elder to him in his pastimes have to take birth first, obviously. So before Lord Chaitanya's appearance, he sends his intimate retinue from the spiritual world to come here and sort of set things up for him. So the first person he sends is Madhavendra Puri, who is the guru of his guru. And then he sends also Ishvara Puri, who will later become his Diksha Guru. He sends Advaita Acharya, who is, we'll talk about him in a minute, how he's very important in calling the Lord to come. He sends his parents, Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata, because his parents need to be there. And then so when that's in place, then Lord Chaitanya is ready. But there has to be an impetus. So the impetus is Advaita Acharya. So Advaita Acharya comes in this situation where no one's worshipping Krishna, nobody even knows about the worship of Krishna. There are basically no devotees, and everyone's worshipping demigods for the most part. Rare souls who are worshipping Lord Vishnu are doing so ritualistically, according to just strict rules and regulations, in the mood of honor, reverence, and he's just like, oh my God. And he's trying to preach. He tries a little bit, but he's just like, and the people were just like thinking he was crazy. They were trying to drive him out of town, and he thought, what can I do? I really need to help these people, and I can't do it myself. Only the Lord can save. If he comes himself, then he can save these people. So he's thinking, Krishna has to come. There's nobody else that can do it except him. But he's thinking, how to make the Lord come. And then as he's very sincerely and very compassionately meditating how to get the Lord to come down, then a verse comes to his mind. And there's one verse that, the Sanskrit to it is that, the English is, Krishna, being very affectionate to his devotees, sells himself to a devotee who worships him simply by offering tulsi leaves and water. So he's like, that's it. He had his own Shaligam Shila. He's like, I have my Shaligam Shila. That Shaligam Shila is still in Shantipur. I've seen it. It's there in the temple. And so he said, I'm going to worship the Lord in the form of Shaligam Shila with tulsi leaves and Ganga water every day. And the Lord says that he sells himself to a devotee who does that. That means he has to do what I want him to do. So then with so much devotion he was, and just like, what do you call it? Like desire, just like really strong desire for the Lord to come. Intense eagerness for the Lord to come. Not for his own sake, but for this, to save everybody else. He was doing this worship. And of course the Lord, he was already, this was all according to his plan, so he already was planning to come. And then, so this was like it was like a pretext. It was like on the pretext of Advaita's calling out. Advaita Acharya would not just do a little, he was like calling out, like roaring, like at the top of, please Krishna, you need to come and save these people, like that. And so then the Lord said, okay, it's all ready, everything is there, on the pretext of Advaita Acharya's request, and I'm going to make my advent. So then, in his own transcendental, mystical way, he appeared in the heart of Jagannath Mishra, and from the heart of Jagannath Mishra, he was transferred to the heart of Sachi Mata and to her womb. And because his mission was to spread the holy names, to spread love of God through the chanting of the holy names, then even before he was born, he already started this process. So we were talking about how like people weren't really worshiping Krishna, but there were a few people that knew at least the names of Vishnu. They knew some names like Govinda and Pundarikaksha, which means the lotus-eyed Lord, and they knew like Hari and some names like that, although they weren't really worshiping him. But it was a kind of thing that, like Kalakantru always quotes this, that there are no atheists in foxholes. So when somebody's really in danger, a situation that they see as extremely inauspicious, then they might call out to the Lord, even though it's not their normal thing to do so. So people weren't normally worshiping the Lord. So then Lord Chaitanya thought, in order to create a very auspicious situation for his appearance, what he did was he created a very inauspicious situation, what everybody thought as an inauspicious situation, which was a lunar eclipse. So it was a full moon night, and according to Vedic culture, eclipses are very inauspicious because the Rahu planet, which is a dark planet, which is like an evil planet, it takes over the moon, which is benevolent, and so it's kind of like a situation where it's sort of symbolic of evil blocking out good, and so it's very inauspicious. And so in India, even today, whenever there are solar or lunar eclipses, when I was living in Vrindavan, I was like thinking it was really extreme, but they close the temple, they close everything. All the shops are closed, these metal things are drawn down and locked, and everybody's just in their homes with the door closed. They fast, they don't eat anything, they don't even do worship of the deity. Like it may be time to offer arti, they don't offer arti because they consider that everything is contaminated. So the only thing that they do during these eclipses is just chant or pray, recite the scriptures like that, engaging in spiritual activities. And if they have access to a holy river like the Ganga or the Yamuna, they'll just go and stand in the Yamuna or the Ganga for the whole duration of the eclipse, which can be for hours. And they're just standing there and chanting the holy names or praying or reciting whatever mantras they know or being guided by Brahmins to do so. So Lord Chaitanya created this situation that there's a total lunar eclipse, and everybody, so in Navadvip the Ganga flows there. So almost all the residents of Navadvip were standing in the Ganga and they were just chanting, any name of the Lord that they knew, Vishnu, Hari, Govinda, Pundarikaksha, save us from this inauspicious thing. Please don't let our, lives become cursed by this evil influence like that. But anyways, they're calling out the holy names. So all the Hindus were doing that. Then there also, there was a large Muslim population because it was, the government of India was Muslim during that time. So then the Muslims, they don't really chant the names of Krishna, but when they saw all the Hindus chanting the holy names in the Ganga, they thought it was funny. And so, mocking them, they were like, oh, Vishnu, Hari, Pundarikaksha, like that. So in that way, the Hindus were all chanting, the Muslims were all chanting, and it was a situation of complete Naam Sankirtan. And then Lord Chaitanya was like, yes, this is the moment. So then he took birth at that moment. And that's, indicative of his whole mission. And so he was born in the year 1486, in the evening of the full moon day of the month of Falgun, which is this month that we're in right now, February, March, April. Yeah, so that was the birth of Lord Chaitanya. So the custom was that a woman would give birth in her parents' home, and that no men would be allowed there at all. For at least 11 days, no men would go to, it was just only women were allowed in. So the women were very blessed that they were the first people to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna, in his most merciful form on this world were the ladies. So all the ladies were going there, all the friends of Sachimata, the wife of Advaitacharya, all their friends, and they were going bringing gifts. And then the demigoddesses. So even the demigods couldn't go because they were male. But the wives of the demigods were dressing up as, Matajis, ordinary women from West Bengal. And they were going in there with gifts, with celestial gifts, and they were just taking darshan of this baby Lord Chaitanya, this glowing, golden, effulgent baby with lotus eyes, and just, extraordinarily beautiful, and offering their blessings and offering gifts. And it was a really wonderful thing. And so later, another way that Lord Chaitanya, even as a tiny baby, he established the chanting of the holy names, was that whenever he would cry, so babies cry, right? And it's like, a baby's crying is something that everybody just like, we have to stop the kid from crying. So the ladies would do everything to try to get Lord Chaitanya to stop. Then he wasn't Lord Chaitanya, then he was baby Nimai. And he was born, the place where he was born, there was a neem tree growing. So we're very fortunate here in Orlando, we have neem trees here. It's a very auspicious tree because it's medicinal and it's purifying. Purifies the blood. If you eat it, it purifies the mind and heart just by seeing it. So Lord Chaitanya, baby Nimai, Lord Chaitanya took birth under there was a neem tree over the house. And so Sachi gave him, he was given the name Vishvambar, which means the maintainer of the universe. And so he maintains or nourishes the universe by distributing the holy names and by giving this process of awakening love of God. But the women, the ladies called him Nimai because they thought that by calling him Nimai, then he'll be protected from disease and from any kind of, inauspicious elements in society. Because the neem, it protects your health, it protects your mind and everything. So they would call him Nimai. And so whenever baby Nimai would cry, the ladies, they would try everything they could. They would rock him, and they would feed him, and they would, make funny faces to try to distract him, or what people do to try. And then somebody got the idea that let's chant the holy names. Let's sing, let's sing, Krishna's names for him. So they started singing, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Like in a very sweet voice, like you would for a little baby. And as soon as they would sing, then he would stop crying. So then every time that he would cry after that, all the ladies would be like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. And then he would give a big smile. And then he would do it sometimes just for fun. He would like fake cry just to get them to chant. So that's why he was like, even before he could walk or talk or anything, he was already propagating the process of awakening love of God, the Yuga Dharma, Harinam Sankirtan. And then later, in his youth, he became a teacher, and he was teaching grammar. So whenever he would teach his students, when you teach grammar, you have to give some examples of sentences that use particular grammatical elements. So every sentence that he would use in his examples were about Krishna. That Krishna did this, and Krishna's qualities are like this, and the conclusion of all the texts that they would read was that you should worship Krishna, that Krishna is the only object of love, and all this. So that's why he was, in everything that he did, he was giving Krishna and the names of Krishna and the qualities of Krishna and love and the importance of love for Krishna. Then later, after he got initiated by Ishvarapuri, then Ishvarapuri told him, just give up all of your studies and just chant the holy names. So then that's when his pastimes of spreading the holy names all over India, every town and village began. He just started. And an interesting thing about Lord Chaitanya is that he didn't give the holy names only to... See, before that, in India, the caste system was very rigid. So only the Brahmin class had access to the scriptures and the Vedic mantras and any kind of mantra. And people who they might teach them to, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and possibly Shudras, less likely, but people who were like lower than Shudras, the untouchables, so-called, they had no access to any kind of mantras, any kind of knowledge in this way. So, but Lord Chaitanya, he just went out and he just gave the holy name to everybody. And so the untouchables, they were like chanting Hare Krishna and outside and dancing in ecstasy. And when the Brahmins saw that, they became really angry, actually. Like, what are you doing? You're destroying our whole culture. you're polluting the Hindu Dharma by giving these, low-class people Vedic mantras and, the names of Krishna. And so Lord Chaitanya, he's known in history books. When I was teaching in school in Mayapur, they got these history books for the middle school students, and my daughter was in the class, and I was just flipping through her history book, and there was a whole chapter about Lord Chaitanya. It wasn't even a devotee, it was just like a karmi history book, and there was a chapter about Lord Chaitanya, and it was all about how he was such an influential social reformer, and that he was like the first person to really start to overturn the caste system and the superiority of the Brahmins and the oppression of the lower classes. So Lord Chaitanya is like famous in so many ways. Even non-devotees appreciate those aspects. So so this was the external reason for Lord Chaitanya's appearance: to spread the holy names, to give love of God, to give access, to give people a process by which they could access the higher rasas and go back to Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. So then the next two verses here talk about the internal mood of Lord Chaitanya. So we're going to go back to these verses from chapter 1 and text 5. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Hladini Shaktir Asmat Ekatmanavapi Bhuvi Pura Deha Vedam Gatoto Chaitanyakyam Prakatam Aduna Tadvayam Chaikyam Aptam Radha Bhavaduti Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. So before we were saying that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. And so here we're learning that actually Lord Chaitanya is more than Krishna. He's Radha and Krishna together. So we worship Radha Krishna. But if we worship Lord Chaitanya, it's worshiping Radha and Krishna together. So that's why Lord Chaitanya is not black, although he's Krishna. There's a famous verse about Lord Chaitanya from Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna Varna Tvisha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti Hi Sameda Saha. So Krishna Varna means he's the category of Krishna, and he's always chanting the holy names of Krishna. But Tvisha Krishnam, Krishna also means black color, but he's a Krishna. He's not black. He's golden. So this golden complexion is actually the complexion of Radharani, because Radharani has this yellowish golden complexion, molten gold. And so because he has the mood of Srimati Radharani, then he imbibes the complexion of Radharani. So Radharani is the embodiment of Krishna's Hladini Shakti. And Krishna wants to, we're going to get that after the next verse. But this mood of Radharani is really suitable for his mission, which is to spread to give love of God, because Radharani, she experiences love of God more than anyone, and also she's so compassionate. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's verses that we were just studying, about the divine and demoniac natures, and Krishna says about these demons, people who just reject him and ignore the scriptures, that he, perpetually throws them down into the darkest regions of ignorance and to take birth in abominable species, life after life, and they can never attain him. And he says things like, even after speaking the Bhagavad Gita, he says, this knowledge should never be given to those who are not devotees, who are not austere and who don't have devotion for me. So Krishna can be a little heavy, he's kind of like, all right, these people are my devotees and these ones are not, getting the mercy in the same way. So, but Radharani is just so compassionate, she can't bear to see any soul suffering at all, because she knows the heart of Krishna. Krishna externally, he's like, yeah, these demons are going to hell, but he doesn't want them to. And Radharani knows that actually Krishna is not happy with the soul's suffering. So she's like, yeah, Krishna, he's like, playing the, as Parker would say, no, I'm not going to say it. He's playing like the tough guy. But actually, he's really soft-hearted, and it really pains him to see those souls suffering in hell. And I don't want to see Krishna suffering due to seeing their suffering. So I want to make him happy by giving everyone his mercy and giving everybody love for him. So this compassion of Radharani is in Lord Chaitanya, that he doesn't consider who's qualified or who's unqualified to get the mercy, to get love of God, to experience this love and be a devotee. So Lord Chaitanya just gives it to everyone. And then there's this still more internal confidential purpose here in Lord Chaitanya's appearance, and this is in text 6. Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahimam Kidrisho Vanaya Eva Swadyo Yena Bhuta Madhurima Kidrisho Vamadiya Sokyam Chasya Mad Anubhavata Kidrisham Veti Lobat Tadbhavadya Samajani Sachi Garba Sindhu Harindu. Translation. Desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, the wonderful qualities in him that she alone relishes through her love, and the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, the Supreme Lord Hari, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the womb of Srimati Sachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean. So there's a word here you might have noticed here, that there's a word that's repeated, Kidrisho. So this word Kidrisho means, it's a question. It means what kind of. So there's it's repeated 3 times. And so he's asking what Lord Chaitanya wants to what Krishna wants to experience is, what kind of love does Radharani feel? He can't understand the depth of her love. And the other thing is, what kind of sweetness does she taste? And then third is, what kind of happiness does she experience from her love and from that sweetness? So, yeah. So Krishna, although he's the supreme enjoyer, and although he's, omnipotent and omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful, but there are some things that he doesn't know. At least there's one thing that he doesn't know, and that is the love that his pure devotees have for him, what it feels like to love him. And so Radharani is the embodiment of love for Krishna. She's the personification of his Hladini Shakti, which is the pleasure-giving potency, which is the loving potency, because Krishna's pleasure comes through love. And her love is, although it's all-pervading, it's like her whole being is just constituted of pure love. She has no material body. Her whole existence is pure love for Krishna. That's what she's made of. And even though it totally pervades her being, still it's expanding constantly. And her love is completely pure. It's completely selfless, prideless, unconditional. But still it's so interesting. It's so full of contradictions, And so Krishna just can't get his head around, as the British would say. He just can't get his head around that love. And what it feels, And so he says that he's saying that, this is described later, he says, I feel the pleasure of being loved by her, but I see that the pleasure that she gets from loving me is 10 million times greater than the pleasure I get from being loved by her. So it's interesting, that we learn here that it's actually the happiness comes more from loving than from being loved. It comes more from giving love to others than by getting it from others. And Krishna is showing that through his example, that I'm getting so much love for her, but she's 10 million times happier than me because of the love that she gives to me. But how can I love myself, I want to taste what, a separate person, what the pure devotee on the status of Radharani feels, the happiness she feels by loving me. So that's the first thing that he wants to know. What kind of love? Then the second thing is, what kind of sweetness does she taste? Because Krishna is all attractive. He's like so sweet. There's that song that Venur Maduram Rupam Madur. Do you know it? It's like it's just like it goes on and on that this about Krishna is sweet. His smile is sweet, his hair is sweet, his sound of his flute is sweet, his voice is sweet, his qualities are sweet. You know, he's just the king of sweetness. And so the devotees, they experience that sweetness, you know, when they see him. His beauty just overwhelms. When they hear his voice, it's like, whoa, they want to melt. And when he plays his flute, their hearts are drawn. They forget about the whole world around them, and all they can do is run to Krishna. And when he interacts with them, it's like, you know, they just are overwhelmed by the sweetness of his personality. But Krishna can't taste that sweetness himself, because you can't appreciate your own. You appreciate through relationship, through interaction. So he's like, my devotees are able to relish the sweetness, especially Radharani. She's the expert one at relishing my sweetness. But I can't taste. I want to experience. I want to taste the sweetness that she feels, that she tastes, that thrill that she gets from her relationship with me. Then the other thing is, what kind of happiness does she experience? So what kind of happiness does she experience from these things, from the love, from the sweetness? So Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure. That's when we chant Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasure. We just talked about Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That Krishna's attractiveness, his sweetness, that qualities of Krishna that just pull the soul to him like a magnet pulls iron. So Krishna is the reservoir of pleasure, but still Radharani is always trying to please him more. She's always trying to give him more and more pleasure. And because her happiness comes from Krishna's happiness, then the more she makes Krishna happy, then she feels happier. So it's kind of like Radha and Krishna's happiness is in competition with each other. It's just ever increasing, that she makes him happy, and then seeing him happy, she becomes happy, and then feeling happy, she wants to make him happy, and then seeing him happy, she becomes happy, and it's like that. It's just it's the endless cycle of upwardly spiraling bliss. But Radharani always wins. Krishna can never catch up. She's always on the top of the spiral, and from her happiness, then his happiness comes, but then her happiness simultaneously increases. So, yeah. So then Krishna's just like, I can never beat her in the happiness game. She's always winning. I want to feel the happiness that she feels. So these three things, Krishna's, the love of the devotee, the sweetness of Krishna, and the happiness that a devotee feels in relationship to Krishna, Krishna can't experience. Only a devotee can experience these things. And so this is the confidential, the internal reason why Lord Chaitanya came, is because, and it's why he came as Krishna. No other incarnation could do the job, because it had to be Krishna, because Krishna had a personal desire to have this experience of being a devotee, of being in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And so he did the two things simultaneously. And the two things are completely compatible, you know, because the mood of Radharani is to love Krishna. And so feeling that love for Krishna, so he could feel the love for Krishna as Radharani, and Radharani's mood is simultaneously compassion for all living entities, wanted to give that love of Krishna to everybody. And so the mission of giving love of God through the chanting of the holy names and experiencing Radharani's love for Krishna, they just were seamlessly interwoven. And he exhibited that for the whole world in order to teach us how to be devotees on the highest level, and the highest relationship with Krishna. And he gave that to the lowest of all people. He came in Kali Yuga at that time where, remember, nobody was worshiping Krishna, and nobody cared even about spiritual life very much. They were just worshiping demigods to get material benedictions. They were totally absorbed in their families and just getting money and trying to enjoy sense gratification. And to those people who didn't even care about him, he gave the highest thing. So this is totally causeless and unprecedented in so many ways, and he gave us the only way that he could teach such fallen people. He knew that I can't teach them just by telling them. They're not going to get it. You know, they're just so dull. Their minds are so just like dulled out from sense gratification and from material desires. I need to go there and personally show them. So he came as a devotee also for this purpose of showing how to be a devotee, how to chant the holy names, how to worship Krishna, and how to feel love for Krishna. And he displayed that in his later pastimes when he was in Jagannath Puri, in his Antya Leela. It's all about these ecstatic manifestations of love for Krishna. So there's this beautiful verse that I'll close with from chapter 4, text 40. Let me mark my place here. See if I find it. Chapter 4, text 40. Se dware achandale kirtana sanchare nama prema malaganti paraila samsare. That Lord Chaitanya spread kirtan even among the untouchables. He wove a wreath of the holy name and prema, with which he garlanded the entire material world. So this verse I really like. I thought it was a nice conclusion to this class because it's the two things, the external purpose and the internal purpose. The external purpose being the holy name and the internal purpose being prema, experiencing the prema and giving the prema to others. And he took these two, the internal reason and the external reason for his appearance, and he wove them into a wreath. You know, he just, you make a wreath, you take the straws and you kind of like intertwine them in such a way, and it becomes a beautiful decoration, like a garland. And it says that with this wreath of the holy name and prema, nama prema mala, mala actually means garland, he garlanded the entire material world. So he just gave the holy name, and he gave love in the mood of Srimati, following in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan, the highest, most intense, most pure, most unconditional love for Krishna to everyone in Kali Yuga. So we're so fortunate to be here at this time in cosmic history where Lord Chaitanya just appeared, such a short time ago, that the places that Lord Chaitanya visited are still there. We can still go to the place where he was born, and to the place where he did this pastime and that pastime, and we can read those pastimes in those places and really feel his presence in Navadvip Dham, his transcendental eternal abode. And we can chant the holy names and worship Gaura and feel ecstatic love for Krishna through this process. So, Jai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaura Purnima Maha Mahotsava ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi.
Haribo.
Is there time for questions or comments?
So Darshanarthi is going to be in 5 minutes. So Prabhupada would like all of us to be inside to greet the deities at 8:35, which is in 5 minutes.
Oh.
And so we request everybody to wear masks. And for those who live together, you can cluster together. The Krishna house devotees can cluster together. And so that way you just have low little distances. And it will be short. It will just be 10 minutes of Darshanarthi inside. And then we're going to go on that side over there and have the Guru Puja at 8:40. So I think...
Okay, we better wrap it up. Is there any quick question?
And quick answer.
Any quick answer?
Can you repeat that verse one more time?
The last one? It's 440.
Yes.
Se Dwarya Chandale Kirtana Sanchare Nama Prema Malaganti Paraile Samsare. Thus he spread kirtan even among the untouchables. He wove a wreath of the holy name and prema with which he garlanded the entire material world.
Haribo.
Jai. Rihamadanga Prabhu.
Why did he come to the material world? Couldn't he have adopted the mood of Radharani in the spiritual world and sent an incarnation here?
Well, he could, but the thing is that it coincided with the time of an incarnation to come anyway, and to spread the chanting of the Hare Krishna, which is also the compassionate mood of Radharani. So it all just kind of worked out perfectly. Yeah, and Advaitacharya was calling him. She was like, I need to go, this needs to be done, and I want to, so it all just was like, all right. It just sort of like came together in his mind, like, this is what's going to work. He satisfied everyone and everything, including himself. Jai.
Jai. Thank you, Prabhupada Priya.
Prabhupada Priya Balaji ki
Yay!
If you guys are heard there. Go, Ranga.
Haribol Prabhu, what's your name?
Prabhupada Priya. Really? What's your name? Rama.
Rehab.
Nice to
Do
meet
you have
you.
that little water heater?
Facebook.
Have we?
Little
Oh yeah,
water
with
heater?
One sec.
What's your name again? Tracy.
Very good class.
Nice that Gaura Purnima came also.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. How's this? Tim? That's what we. You can watch this on every Sunday. They do a live. That's like second or third time.
Just go down, go down.
You switch it.
I think it will So the conch goes at the start of that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can cut out the conch. Should we? Or will they be blowing the conch?
I don't think they'll blow it.
So should I keep it?
Yeah. People, please, everybody, do not pay obeisances on the ground. Please just do so in your mind. Thank you.
Can we start chanting?
Shri Shri Nitai Gaura Nataraja Ki.
Doing good, Purnima. We're going to say. I think everyone would say. Everyone's confused.
Now we follow Madhu. Morgan and Arjuna are watching you.
Hey, Morgan Arjuna. Hare Krishna, this is Madhu's live podcast. Welcome to the Gaura Purnima Festival at the Orlando Temple. Krishna Purnima. Welcome to Krishna Orlando. Today we're going to have a nice abhishek for the Lord. We're going to pour yogurt, maybe honey. Maybe you can put all this good stuff on it. Okay? The Lord's going to get for you. Good for it. Good for it.
Such a nice arrangement, such a nice Purnima festival.
Yeah. Thank you much.